Okay, strap in for a wild and crazy ride on this one. This is the um, real ships where we are setting up LODs for them. Um, Synth, I'm gonna leave the bomber and the fighter for you to do. This is basically going to focus on the missile corvette, which I'll take care of. And there are more complicated examples of other things later on, um, but I'll deal with those um, as those arise. I'll do another video. Um, this is basically for single mesh, fairly small ships that are used with a lot of frequency. So first of all, we've got the Corvette scalar here. So that's the parent object that has the LODs on it and so forth. I noticed this thing's butt is sticking into the um, uh, scale cube there. So let's move that a bit. So the flame trails outside that. We've got the missile corvette object here, which doesn't really, does that need to be there? Yeah, it does. Okay, so so this is where we'll put the LED groups. LED group, and so we've got LED 0, hooray, and then we're definitely going to want 4 LED groups with this. This gets a bit nutty as we start moving away from the higher LODs. So first of all, yeah, all right. So all the way down to when it's filling up. See, the thing is, these ships are shown so darn small on the screen normally, these little bitty ships, that even having it covering 20% of the screen is quite a lot by the standards of this this unit. It's normally shown from much, much, much further away. So I feel okay doing this sort of weird LOD setup where it's like the first 80% is all LOD 0. So LOD 1, there's no surprises here whatsoever. But I'll go ahead and go through it. Mesh, simplify. Let's see what we got here. So we got ourselves 1375. I got to pull that out. And we'll go ahead and hide the original Corvette. So now we know we're looking at just the mesh in question here. So we got 13,975 vertices total. We do want to protect the textures this time, so that's different. Probably we can take off the curvature. Let's see. Let's go ahead and start trying to really down the poly count, vertex count a lot and see what the result is there. Okay, seriously, that is amazing. That going down to 25%, there's like no noticeable difference. So let's push our luck and go to 50. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So alrighty, let's go to 33. This ship is just super friendly to reduction. What can I say? For LOD2, let's just kind of call that good enough, I guess. This is a example of where we may actually want to improve LOD 0 a little bit, but it's probably not that important. We can always do that in the future if we so decide. Okay, so we got missile corvette. LOD1. So that's all familiar. And now we can drag that buddy in there and get rid of the, all right, so what's going on here? Oh, I've got this disabled. That's what's going on here. Okay, so yeah, loads and loads of detail. We get out further, teensiest bit of detail goes away. You know what? This is such an incredible likelihood, or likeness rather, that it seems a shame to wait that far to go down that many poly. So 24% it is. Normally I wouldn't bother with that, but okay. So now LOD2 though. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply this and then rid of that simplifier thing as always. And I need to fix mesh renderers on this so it gets rid of the reflection probe usage and so on as well. Here's where things get interesting. We're going to grab ourselves an LOD2 and pull that on out. And since we're far enough away, I'm going to go ahead and just hide this anyway, even though I'm probably going to forget in a little bit. But okay, so this is our LOD2 using the Missile Corvette LOD1 presently. And what we're going to do is go under Window, Vacuum Shaders, Mesh Materializer. That pops open another window. Go ahead and drag LOD2 in there. It'll create a prefab name, LOD2. Go ahead and name that something better. Missile Corvette. If I can spell that. Yeah, Missile Corvette. Okay. The shader that default shader that you're gonna want to use here is custom, and then it's going to be C ship emission vertex. That's what you're gonna want for LOD2 with all of these sort of ships. Now, what Materializer does here is this lets us take something that is textured and bake its textures into the vertex colors, into the vertex data. And that's basically meaning, translation, no textures, no normal maps, nothing. It's just going to be color on vertices. So where are we going to get that color? We're going to get it from the albedo texture. That's the name of the texture in the type of material that this type of shader that this thing has. And it is UV set UV0. You don't need to use the maps or blur. That'll get weird. And there are no pre-existing vertex colors. We don't care about that. Not going to do any of this other stuff except under optimize. No need for compression or any of that jazz. However, you are going to turn off some stuff. Normally we have the UVs, normals, and tangents inside a mesh. We don't want any of that. We do want normals, and now we want colors as well. So these are the only two channels that are going to show up in the mesh. If you look in here, oh gosh, that has UV, UV2 for some reason. Okay, this also has UV, UV2 for some reason. It doesn't have, whatever. It also has normals. I know because it's not showing broken in the lighting. So I don't know. For some reason, it's not showing the normals. But anyway, this is what you want to do here. Now, this is going to create a prefab and also a complete copy of this in the temporary folder here. And you're going to want to then move that elsewhere. I'm going to shift this out of the way. Now, this is what we've got here. And there's some interesting stuff going on already. Now there's some weirdness here. First of all, Missile Corvette underscore LOD2, this thing it looks white, right? The material itself looks white, and so that might strike you as an error. But basically, what this is saying is that the um, all of the color that is coming out of this thing is coming out from the vertex colors. So when we're talking about vertex colors, so this has tris and colors, and that's it in there. It also better have normals said. Okay, yeah, it just doesn't list normals for some reason. That's interesting. But yeah, if you don't check normals on there, then the shadows will be all kinds of messed up, and so you kind of wonder about that. Um, so let's go ahead and turn back on the original Missile Corvette. I'm going to go ahead and take this new one and just move it up slightly so we can see the differences here, because I think that's an important thing to do. Is look at these things side by side. Now, one is using textures, the other has no textures. It's got a shape, and it's got a shader, and it's got some calculations in the shader. This is a custom shader that I created that does a couple of interesting things. It's always going to be the C ship emission vertex shader. Now, there's a couple of values in here which are in there by default. One is the floor for emission. Now, normally the brightness of the color on a given vertex is going to be expressed between 0 at complete black and 1 at complete white. Okay. Now, if we want to make everything glow, which we don't, then the floor for emission would be higher. What I want to do is basically set a floor saying take away anything that is already less than half brightness. Don't make that glow at all. If you want to cap that even further, you could say something like 0.7. And that also has the effect of dimming everything, though. And so there's an emission multiplier out here, which you can then use to crank that back up. Now, when it's at 0.5 and 2, the relationship is identical. It cuts off everything that is half size, or sorry, half brightness or less, and then it doubles, and it's also at that time lowering the brightness of what's left by 50%. And then our emission multiplier here then doubles the brightness of what's left back out, and we get a glow that looks approximately like what it did before. It's in the ballpark enough, and you can see it on the back as well. Now, overall, when we zoom out, those look pretty similar, with one big difference. One big problem that we have here. And you probably see it, which is this thing on the top. We don't have a glowing cockpit, and that is a big issue because that immediately is noticeable. So we have to paint the cockpit back on. And I can hear you cringe already. Good news is you can be incredibly sloppy with it, because we're talking about something that is a teeny little blip way off. So what you're going to do is you're going to go under Tools, and you're going to go to Vertex Tools Pro. And that's going to pop open another window here. Now you're going to select Missile Corvette LOD2, the thing that you actually want to paint. You're going to hit Initialize Everything Now, and then that adds on a little vertex color stream thing and some other stuff. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to first of all, probably want to shrink down the size of the brush a little bit. You can go ahead and go into painting mode, and then that lets you see the size of the brush. And then we want to paint something that looks kind of yellowy orangish. Again, we're talking about getting in the ballpark here. So we're going to come to some of these and just tap a couple of times here. Now, what you're going to notice is these start glowing once you pass a certain threshold of brightness. I just explained how the shader works to you. This is it in action. Now, you can also go on the shadow side of this to verify that it's working. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that there is some very odd stuff that can happen with exactly how glows, or exactly what gets painted, basically, um, because this is um, only able to do painting at the intersections of stuff. Now, that's also why when we did the conversion using the mesh materializer, that's why it lost this thing. So you see how it's got this extra spread when I come out here, and see how I can't paint here. There's a vertex here. There's a joint or corner there, and there's a corner here. I can paint on the corners. I can't paint in the middle on a flat surface because um, the vertex color information is stored at vertices, which are corners. So again, we get to be kind of messy about it. When we start zooming out this far, look at this. This is the point at which they start transitioning from one to the other. Can't tell the difference particularly because we just painted this in. Now, with this painting that we just did, this was all done in a local mesh, an instance mesh, and so that is something we need to save as an actual separate mesh. So in order to do that, probably the easiest way, remove the mesh collider and the other jazz that they put on there. Go ahead and you're going to want to run mesh simplify on this, and we may as well go ahead and start doing our simplification at this point. Um, I'll tell you what, let's save this as an intermediate thing because we're talking about a few kilobytes here, and this is only getting saved. This won't even get sent out to users. So let's go ahead, and this is good enough for our current working copy. So I'm going to go ahead and save. You know what? I'm going to put it in the little temporary folder here. Assets, temporary, Missile Corvette LOD2, LOD2 dot asset. Hooray. And at this point now, we have something that is fully painted. And what I'm going to do is remove this old copy here that had the tries and the colors and all that. See, this put in UV4. That's annoying. I don't know why it does stuff like that sometimes. All right. So we've still, these three things here, these are what are used in this particular prefab. This LOD2 that I used as a working thing can be deleted. Now, let's see if we can do better. So I'm going to remove this because it's probably referring to an improper, oh boy, what did I just click? I see. It's probably referring to an improper mesh when we do that. So we add on mesh simplify again. Let's try 50%, ground number. And all right, so let's zoom way on out here to the point where this thing disappears. There. Look at that. No textures. No textures whatsoever. And that is a pretty good approximation. I mean, this is incredibly decimated and also using no textures. All right. So now let's go ahead and hit enable prefab usage again on this, and we'll go back into temporary again. LOD2, and I'm just going to call this LOD2A, just because I want to be sure and emphasize that this is what on earth happened here? Sorry, distraction. Just emphasize this is the smaller one that got kind of further reduced. Now, why is this showing up with two? What is this? What are you doing here? That is bizarre. But okay, whatever. So we'll drag this on in here. We're gonna copy the TRS, the translation rotation scale, from LOD1. And so then we've got this right back in here, and we're going to drag this into the LOD2 slot. So now we'll do our testing here. LOD1. Man, it gets hard to even tell the difference once you go there. I mean, there is a difference that kicks in, but it's just not an enormous one, which is pretty slick, I have to say. All right. Now, here's a tricky thing. One of the things about dynamic batching in particular is that the material has to be the same, and the vertex count has to be low enough. Once we have moved, the vertex color data does not matter. So now that we've moved to a vertex color based shader, that means that as long as our floor free emission and our emission multiplier are the same, anything can use this exact same shader, and it will be just fine. So this is kind of basic ship LOD2. Let's call it that. If you need something that is different from negative 0.5 and 2, then use something else. But other than that, when you get this vertex colored version, you just drag in the existing basic ship one and delete the new material that it has. And that way, in the event, there's two things that might happen. One, in the case of some things that are small, you may have a vertex count at LOD2 that is small enough for dynamic batching. Two, it's possible that in the future, the dynamic batching requirements may change in a future version of Unity, and we want to not have to go back and redo a bunch of work. So let's go ahead and have them sharing all the materials. And three, Vulkan API support is coming in this coming year for Unity on Linux and Windows, and that has mesh instancing support, which may or may not be really relevant with this exact cross mesh thing, because it has to be the same mesh. But and Metal on OS X has that support as well. So we could get into some different forms of batching, long story short, once the Vulkan support is fully out there. Anyhow, so let's just play it safe and go ahead and I'll make this thing a reusable. Reusable. There we go. And so we'll just put this in a reusable, and then we'll move these things here into, and actually we don't even really need this thing because this is just the prefab for LOD2, and we're done with that. So we'll just hang on to these two things right here. We will put these under parts for Missile Corvette. So at this point now, we can just verify this is all working properly. Hooray, hurrah. It is. Now, LOD3, we're going to take this to yet another shader that is even simpler. What you might find interesting about, I'm going to go ahead and hide this so we can see what we're doing, because this time we're not going to have to do any painting. What we're going to have to do this time with we're not going to have to do any painting, and I'm not really planning on using any emissions on this. I have something that is just vertex colored and takes shadows using the Blend-Fong method, which is what we're using for a lot of our shadowing of stuff. And so that means that we can really simplify the heck out of it, and we don't have to use the emissive textures. Now that may prove to be too much, but let's just see. So I guess actually what we need to do first, let's move this up and out of the way a little bit here, and then let's turn this back on so we can actually kind of validate where our LOD2 is going to be coming in. This is hard to read, so I'm going to just switch that back to LOD2 in this prefab. So, all right, so LOD1 kicks in here, LOD2 kicks in there on the bottom one, and then by the time we're hitting LOD3 here, the question becomes, is the emission even particularly visible? So what we're going to do is find out. And so this is going to be basic ship LOD3. It already named it that for me. And this is going to be always, and this one has no parameters. There's never a reason for this to be anything else. So because this is using an incredibly stupid simple vertex shader that I created there, the ship vertex only thing. And so on this, we're going to call this Missile Corvette LOD3 and drag that on here. Now, okay, can see that there is a difference in that it's no longer lit up there, but the amount of fanciness that we're really talking about here, or not talking about here, is pretty substantial. So, this really just does not make a big difference in what we're seeing at this distance for those sort of ships. It's just not going to be all that notable. But this shader is more efficient. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to come in here to our Missile Corvette LOD3, mesh simplify. What do we got? We're starting with that. So let's see if we can get even lower. Let's see if we can get to 33%. We no longer need to protect the texture. And let's see if we don't use curvature, what happens? Wow, terrible. Wow, I can't see anything. Okay. So I can kind of see there's a thing there, sort of kind of. no matter what, we're not getting into the realm of being able to batch this thing, which is definitely not something that makes me real happy, because we need to get into the realm where we can batch, if at all possible. So, okay, this is more promising in some ways. Still got to get under 300 some odd vertexes. So I can't see what the heck is. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna need to. I'm gonna need to come up with some sort of more efficient uh, shell-based method here. That wow, that really adds a lot of vertices. It's interesting to see what does what. Just not getting a lot of savings out of this at this point. There's probably a way that we can. Okay, so this is when it would be kicking in, is right here, and so um, oh, um, tell you what, um, something we can do, because look, those are a little bit different color. Oh, tragedy. Um, we can come in here under Vertex Tools Pro, initialize everything now, give ourselves a real bright yellowy orange, a little more orangey, real bright. Come on in here. Let's paint this thing. Whoa, boy. Oh, boy. Cancel without save. I'm going to do that. That's a good example of when such extreme low poly stuff can really do unexpected things. Yeah. It's just kind of the wrong color. Yellow is really the main thing. We can get it a little darker, I guess. Um, whoa, all right. Crashed Unity. Well, let's not do that with Vertex Painter. Past a certain point, at a great distance, there's only so much efficiency we can wring out of this. So that is the process, though, for everything up to and including LOD3. And what I'll have to do for LOD3 is I just need a better method of making a really ultra low poly example here. So what I can do is, in the very short term, we'll just say that we use LOD2 for LOD3 as well. So that way, as we go through these, it stays visible until such time as it's culled. Let's link the views, the game view back here, see what's going on. Can I even see it? Yeah. And then it blinks out of existence at 2% of the screen, which is fair enough. So that's the Missile Corvette done, except LOD3 is, LOD3, I need to find a better way of getting its wrapper material on there, but that's not a. We can get that down. We can get that under 300. Possibly if we remove the normals, that would remove the shadows. So I don't know. I'll figure that out and I'll do a small updated video. But that's how to get through the other LODs and wind up with something that performs well. That this is applying really to the small ships. Once you start getting into these larger ships, then there's a few different things we have to start doing because they can't be condensed quite this well. We're going to use a similar workflow on all of them though. Simply making it so that we're not having to send any textures whatsoever across to the GPU for these things is a fairly big win. Atlas and small or not, that's a few megs of texture data that we don't have to send 60 plus times a second across the PCI Express line. So that is helpful. This vertex data, the vertex color data is just a series of float fours, I think, and it's tiny. So that's I'm pretty pleased with how the results are there. Thanks for watching.